how I'm achieving that flat again, but not ruining the curve. How quick you can actually make your bangle bracelet, making everything so perfect. It was very satisfying. We have a beautiful cuff bracelet. Hello guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today we're making jewelry, and we will be making a cuff bracelet with a very gorgeous turquoise tone, and we will be puffing that out for sure, so be prepared for a lot of hammering. I think I say that a lot on my videos because, I don't know, hammering and shaping things is just became my kind of thing, I would say. I love to hammer because we can create bigger piece of jewelry that's not too heavy, because I really don't enjoy heavy jewelry. Of course, I had custom orders when it comes to bracelets, and I made quite heavy ones. When it comes to that weighty side, it's more for men. So I avoid the heaviness when it comes to women jewelry. We want to be lightweight, not overly crowded, comfortable. All those factors have to be in the jewelry piece. We will be putting pattern on that cuff bracelet as well. Putting pattern on silver is very easy choice when you want to have that rounded look or more edgy look. It's just very simple way how to create that, because you know, silver wants to have patterns. It's quite cool metal itself, so it's not like speaking for itself. We want some kind of movement and pattern when it comes to this type of metal. So we will be doing a lot today. We will create that beautiful cuff bracelet. We will make a bezel setting for that gorgeous turquoise stone, and we will make everything together. I will show you how I'm soldering that bezel setting, which is flat bottom, and we need to solder that it will be beautifully flush with the surface, and we have a curve going. So I will show you my ways how I'm achieving that flat again, but not ruining the curve, that we would have that beautiful edge around our bezel. We will have everything from start to finish with all measurements as always. And I want to announce that this video is sponsored by Rio Grande. It's a huge store where you can find whatever you might need for your jewelry making, from silver, equipment, tools, everything you might need for your beautiful creations, and they're giving you a code with $20 off of your shipping price. So thank you, Rio Grande, for sponsoring this video, and I think we have to start this. And we're starting everything with 0.8 millimeter thickness of the sheet and putting a very beautiful flower pattern on it. If you want a good impression in your silver sheet, you have to push harder. That pressure will give you a good impression. And of course, your metal has to be annealed pretty well as well, because we need soft metal just to take all that pattern as it would be like a sponge. And then we will get that beautiful impression, like as you can tell, it is pretty looking. Now when we draw all that shape that we need for our cuff bracelet, we have to saw that out. As you can tell, I was very strategical about this one because we basically don't have that much to cut off, but still use your saw more, because the more you use the saw is the cheapest way how to reduce your metal. Even we have the tiniest line, just try to cut that off with the saw. Trust me, more you will practice on this one, it will save your time a lot in the future, because we're reducing metal the quickest way when we're sawing. We can make it the best line as well. We can reduce all that sanding later on, so practice on sawing. Nailing this skill will help you so much. After sawing, grab a file and reduce all material that you don't need, or correct the shape, or whatever you need to do on your piece. Files, it's like the second quickest way to reduce metal, so use that. And after that activity, we could go with wet and dry paper or wet and dry sponge, as I do now. I just want to round my edges more, just make it softer and cleaner. And when we have everything cleaned, we can go to actually form our cuff bracelet. For that, I'm using my bangle forming set. I was showing that in my other video, so I will link it here as well. I'm talking more in depth how to make that curve shape happen. To make that puff effect from your sheet metal, it's not that easy as it would be to make that concave shape, because we're not pushing metal down, we actually want to make it higher. That's why it is so hard to do, because we are basically raising the metal up while pushing with the hammer down. So you have to be very aware what kind of hammers you're choosing to work with, because that will determine how quick you can actually make your bangle bracelet, or in this case, the cuff bracelet. I showed you how it looks like from one go after annealing, and now we have to anneal again because our metal is fully hardened, so we need to anneal it and make it soft again that we could form it again. If you don't know how to anneal properly, and if you don't know if you anneal properly, just use Sharpie, put some dots or lines on your piece, and when it will disappear, you're good to go. Stop annealing. Again, we have soft metal to work with, and we're hammering even more. Now I'm using other head of my hammer just to push those sides even more. And always check your inside of the cuff bracelet, because it will tell you everything, where your hammer hit, where it didn't, where you can push more. Because if you see all that shine going throughout, you're done. You have to anneal your piece again. But if you see white spaces, then you can hammer even more. Now I'm annealing the last time just to perfect it even more, because if you want a beautiful edge going around your piece, you want to hammer more, and just to choose another hammer to do that, because this hammer is for pushing down the metal, so I'm focusing it just on that edge. And as you can see, it's just working so beautifully and making everything so perfect. It was very satisfying to see that in real, and even through camera you can see that pretty well. Now we're putting that aside and taking this beautiful turquoise and creating a bezel setting for it. For that, I'm measuring all around the stone itself, because heights are very different with all of the stones usually, so you have to be aware where your highest point and lowest point is, and make your bezel strap according to that. I always go for a higher bezel strap because I will be sanding. I don't want to be stressed that I will lose some material, and better to have more and reduce it later on than to have not enough and then have to remake it again. I remade a lot of bezel settings, so now I'm like more aware. Practice makes those decisions. We're working with 0.4 millimeter thickness of the bezel. This thickness I found that works the best for me when I'm working with turquoise stones, because 0.3 millimeter thickness never been enough for me. I don't like that thin metal because it's very fragile. You can put fire scale pretty quickly, and when you need to remove that with sanding, you're losing material and then you're not having a beautiful edge anymore. So yeah, I like that 0.4. After soldering our bezel setting, we need to sand that bottom part that it would be flat, that we could solder that on the sheet. You can skip this step because you can solder your bezel setting on your cuff bracelet or bangle bracelet straight on, but I decided to solder that on a sheet and then solder on my cuff bracelet because we have pattern there. It made sense in my head and I just wanted to do it that way this time. When you're soldering your bezel setting on the sheet, make sure you're heating up your piece first with the flux, then put your solder pieces in. It will stick with your flux and you don't have to worry if it will fly away because it won't. And we have to heat everything around our piece. Try to focus on the bottom of your sheet because we have a bigger metal piece there and we need to heat that up first. And then that solder would flow so beautifully around and we need to just cut it out. And as I said before, we're going with the saw to reduce the metal, then we're going with files, and then we're choosing wet and dry or radial disc, whatever you're using, but reduce the metal first with saw and files because it's the quickest way and it's the cheapest way as well. And always don't forget the bottom part. We need everything flat that we need to solder. That's important. And if we talk about that flat, we need to make sure that we have that flat on the bangle bracelet or the cuff bracelet as well. So for that, I'm using the opposite side of my punches with a flat bottom. You just have to be aware that you're using the correct size of your punches. We need that flat to be just in that place where we will be soldering our bezel setting. So that's important because we want to keep that curve on the sides, but we want to have that flat where that bezel setting will be. If you have better decisions how to make that happen, just write that in the comments for us all to learn about it. I will try it out for sure. And when we have that specific flat bottom placement, we can go with sand belt or files and just make it even more flat where we need that to be flat. Now we have to prepare our bezel setting to solder on our cuff bracelet. So for that I'm using sweat solder. It's a very good technique if you want to have kind of perfect soldering, I would say, because we erase our mistakes before we could make it, if that makes sense. So for that, we're just putting small pieces of solder on the bezel itself and melting that a bit, creating a good space of solder. Then we have to sand it away because it will be excess solder at that point, and we have that oxidation too, which makes solder not to flow again. So we're just making sure we're sanding enough, but not too much of that solder, and putting everything on our cuff bracelet. It was not enough at that point, but I put more around my bezel later on. I was very careful because we have pattern. I don't want to have any leaking around it because it's a hell of a task when you want to take it out. And when you're soldering your bezel setting on that cuff bracelet, always make sure you're heating everything up because it's very big piece of metal we're working with. We have to make everything very hot just to make that solder would melt. And never try to solder everything at one go because it just puts more stress on your shoulders and we don't need that. I think I came back and soldered this piece 4 times just to make it happen and just to keep it right. I was even pushing more of my bezel just to make it flatter, just to have as perfect soldering there as I could. And yeah, now it's the sanding part. And for sanding, I had to reduce some lines from that punching and make it flatter. I was using wet and dry paper. I was using radial discs as well. I just love how it looks like in the inside. It's just like those small, tiny lines there. It just makes everything so handmade, but in a good way. Then file the edges. Of course, we need to round them because it's too sharp. And then I finished everything off with big radial discs because it just makes everything quicker if you have a big piece. Just don't go with very harsh abrasive, and don't push your piece too much as well, because we don't want to take out that pattern. We want to be light-handed when we're polishing. I will do an in-depth video about polishing and sanding, how to perfect it, because I need to talk more. These videos are too short to put everything in, so I think we need in-depth video about that. If you agree, just say yes we do in the comments. Because as you know, I'm doing all kind of stuff, and when it comes to patterns and polishing on patterns as well, it's very important how you will go with your brushes, what kind of brushes you will use to achieve results. Because I didn't want to put patina effect, I just always avoid it, but I want to see that pattern, so you have to find ways how to send it and make that piece as you want. Now we're preparing our upper part of the bezel for the stone setting. And when it came to stone setting, usually my stones never fit from the first go, because I want to have a tight fitting bezel. And when we have that tight fitting bezel, usually when we sand and polish, we bend a bit of those walls and they come in. So we want to have them straight again. For that, I'm using nylon pliers, and it works like a charm. I will link more in-depth video where I'm talking about how I'm setting my stones, so if you want to know more, it will be here in the corner. When the stones set in place securely, I like to have that smooth edge even more. Now I'm using silicone wheel, sometimes I'm using pumice wheel, so it's just like depends on what the piece wants from me, because now I had quite narrow edge around it, so that narrow silicone wheel was the perfect choice. And voila, we have a beautiful cuff bracelet. So we have a very beautiful cuff bracelet with blue turquoise. It's very classic, I would say. It's just that soft matte finish with a bit of shine. If you make your sanding and polishing right, you will achieve a beautiful pattern on your piece, and you don't have to even use blackening, which is looking more luxury, I would say. And I love that in my pieces, when I can achieve a very clean silver with a very beautiful view. That's my mission, I think, just to avoid blackening. I truly hate the process. Like, I truly hate the process. The smell of it, that whole cleaning aspect. Okay, sometimes we need that. I agree. There are pieces that we actually have to use it. But if we don't, better not. I hope you liked the video, and I hope you learned something useful, or I don't know, maybe got some inspiration out of this video. Maybe I have different tricks how to make that bracelet happen. I would be very intrigued to know, because I'm always learning and I want to try all the ways how we can make jewelry, because why not? I don't like to stick with one rule. I like to have different options when I'm coming to make my jewelry, and you know, we're different. I like this, you like that, but maybe we can exchange a good stuff too. So if you have suggestions, give me that. Maybe you have suggestions for this channel as well. So yeah, I hope you like it, and I will see you in my next one.